Nothing external can defeat you if you do not surrender from within. People don't lose because the world is too harsh, but because their minds haven't been trained to face the harshness. When pressure comes, very few can stay clear-headed. They let emotions control their actions, let fear suffocate their choices, let circumstances decide in place of reason. But if you build a mind as solid as steel, you won't just survive, you will lead. In a world constantly shifting, your mind must be the one thing that never wavers, because that's where every action begins. Every choice stems from how you think, and every result reflects the quality of the mindset you silently uphold. A weak mind reacts. A strong mind reflects with reason, with resilience, with a calmness that is quiet yet as weighty as a boulder in a rushing stream. You've seen it. Most people rush to fix what's outside, the job, the relationship, the schedule, the conditions, but they never reach for the real control panel, their own thoughts. They try to change others, change their environment, but they keep the same way of thinking that leads them to repeat the same mistakes, the same sense of helplessness. It's not because they're weak, it's because they've never been trained. Because the mind, just like a muscle, if not trained, it grows soft, sluggish, and easily injured under impact. This isn't about fake positivity. I'm speaking to you about a kind of inner stability forged from deliberate effort, not surface-level encouragement. Because the truth is, you cannot control every situation, but you can absolutely control how you respond. When you realize that, you take back your power. Until you understand that, you're still handing the steering wheel of your life to the external world, to your emotions, to others' judgments, and you will continue to suffer until you learn how to return inward and reestablish order in your thinking. Every external crisis begins with inner chaos. A weak mind will run, react impulsively, or shatter under pressure. But a strong mind will observe, dissect, and choose actions with precision, even when everything around seems to be collapsing. Because the world doesn't need you to panic with it, the world needs you to keep a clear head and make the right decisions when everyone else is lost. Staying solid under pressure is not a talent. It's the result of a chain of ongoing decisions, choosing not to react hastily, choosing to step back half a pace to see clearly, choosing not to let temporary emotions destroy long-term goals. The more you train your mind in ordinary situations, the less you lose control in critical ones. And if you notice, those who hold the most influence and make the wisest decisions are usually not the ones who speak the loudest, but their words carry weight because they come from refined inner strength. No one is born calm. Calmness is a skill born from inner observation, from regulating reflexes and learning to create space between stimulus and response. That space, even if just a few seconds, is exactly where you can change your entire life. Because if you react like you always do, you'll repeat the same old outcome. But if you pause, evaluate, and choose a different response, you've broken a link in the old chain of behavior. And that is the starting point of transformation. Don't wait until life collapses to learn how to control your mind. Start now, in the smallest situations, when someone irritates you, when you're criticized, when you're overlooked, when you're disappointed, when you feel unrecognized. Those are the perfect training grounds. If you can stay calm, not say something you'll regret, not act on impulse, but take a moment to redirect, you're training your brain into a warrior. Not a warrior who fights others, but one who masters the self. The cost of a weak mind is that you're pulled around by everything that doesn't matter. Every small negative feeling can ruin your entire day. Every meaningless comment can shatter your spirit. Every temporary failure can make you want to quit. But with a mind rigorously trained, you're no longer shaken by small things. You still notice them, but you're not governed by them. You can tell what's a true voice and what's just an echo from fear. And you act from the strongest place within you, with no need for external reminders. If you truly want to win in life, not through some glamorous outer shell, but with an inner strength that nothing can break, you must begin with your own mind, not with theory, with practice, every day, every situation, every unseen decision Because once you control the inside, you've mastered the most important thing. And once you've done that, nothing out there can defeat you anymore. Not because everything gets easier, but because you've become strong enough to walk steadily even when everything is in chaos. Not the whole day, just the first hour after you open your eyes is enough to determine whether today you are living in reaction or leading with intention. Most people let their minds get hijacked in the very first minutes, by the phone, by messages, by the news, by unresolved worries. And do you know what happens when you start your day with chaos? Your entire day will carry that same chaotic energy. Not because you're careless, but because you weren't intentional. I'm telling you, if you want to build a strong mind, start in the early morning. Before the world has a chance to pull you in, be the first to set the rhythm for yourself. Because if you don't, you will live reactively, responding to everything, driven by emotions dictated by external factors, and you will never develop inner strength. If you keep letting those first seconds of the day slip by without purpose, morning is when your brain is most programmable. When you're still in an alpha state, half asleep, half awake. Every thought, word, and image you encounter gets deeply embedded in your subconscious. If you choose to start with negative news, social media, comparison, or anxiety, you are feeding yourself a subtle toxin and letting it steer every decision for the rest of the day. But if you know how to take advantage of this golden hour, just 30, 60 minutes, you can reset your entire internal navigation system. And that requires nothing but decisiveness from you. Don't wait for inspiration. Don't wait to feel ready. Get up like someone with a mission, as if you are running a company called My Life, and each morning is your most important strategic meeting. You wouldn't be late for a CEO's meeting. So don't be late for yourself. When you wake up and act with purpose, your brain receives the signal that you are in command, not your emotions or old habits. And from that moment on, your entire nervous system begins operating in a new direction. Let me make this clear. You don't need a perfect morning. You just need one decisive choice. Don't reach for your phone. Don't get pulled into the whirlpool of reaction. Don't absorb random content. Instead, spend a few minutes speaking truth to yourself, a simple sentence. Today, I will be clear. Today, I will be steady. Today, I will not allow trivial thoughts to invade my mind. No grand gestures, no elaborate routines, just your full presence and belief in the words you say. That's how you reestablish discipline in the brain. That's how you begin building sustainable neural strength, independent of external motivation. Each morning, you enter the central control room, where you get to choose the frequency you'll broadcast to the world, and if you choose wisely, the whole day will align on a solid axis. But if you choose poorly, or not at all, you are handing control over to unworthy forces, unread messages, social media, or someone else's temporary mood. You don't need 10 complicated steps to master your morning. You only need 3 things. Wake up on time, don't touch your phone, and remind yourself why you're awake today. Remember, winners don't wait to be pushed into action. They start their day from a place of initiative. They don't just have motivation, they have a system, and their system begins with stillness, to choose clear thinking before any action. If you're feeling like your life lacks control, lacks direction, lacks inspiration, don't look for the answer out there. Look at your morning. The way you wake up says a lot about how you treat yourself. If you begin your day with procrastination, avoidance, meaningless consumption, you are teaching your mind, I don't deserve clarity, discipline, or positive energy. And if you repeat that daily, you will lose faith in yourself without even realizing it. But if you treat your morning as sacred time to listen, to set intention, to steer, then you are building the foundation for a life that nothing can shake. You don't have to wake up at 4 a.m. or meditate for an hour or pressure yourself into a rigid model. You just need to wake up with one question: where do I want to take my mind today? and then act in that direction, even if it's just one small step, because what matters isn't how grand your start is. What matters is whether you can repeat the right action every morning until it becomes identity. A winning mind is not built in moments of peak excitement. It's forged in the quiet moment when you'd rather stay in bed, but you sit up anyway. When you want to grab your phone, but keep your hand back. When you want to find a reason to delay, but instead you rise and say to yourself, I am living this life on purpose. If you can own your morning, you can own your day. And if you can own your day, you can own your life. So don't let your morning be run on autopilot. Reclaim it. Start it with clarity, with directed action, with a mind that's reminded every day you are not here to react, you are here to lead. And every deep victory always begins with small, unseen choices that you still choose to make. Because you know you deserve a life not led by chaos, but shaped by the mindset you forge each morning. The world won't wait for you to be ready before it starts attacking your mind. The moment you open your eyes, it's already prepared to throw noise at you, false standards, meaningless comparisons, and invisible messages that you're still not enough. And if you don't have a morning ritual to keep your thinking steady, you will be swept away. Not because you're weak, but because you weren't prepared. You're living in an era where distraction isn't just a risk, it's the default. And that default starts creeping into your mind from the very first moment before you even get a chance to decide who you want to be today. I don't need to know what you do for a living, where you live, or how many pressures are waiting for you in your inbox. What I need you to look at directly is how you spend the first 30 minutes of your morning. Because that moment isn't just a warm-up, it's the time you either reprogram yourself or let your mind continue operating on the old script, old habits, and old emotions that have left you feeling drained, confused, or directionless for far too long. And the painful truth is most people don't even realize they're surrendering every morning by being too permissive with their phone, with messages, with checking other people's feedback before even checking in on their own clarity. You don't need more time. You need a new psychological framework to protect the first 30 minutes of your day like you would a top-secret strategic meeting for your own life. A morning ritual is not a complicated ceremony. It's how you remind yourself that you still have the power to take ownership of your life by steering your thoughts, emotions, and attention from the very first step. When you open your eyes, you owe the world no response. You have only one task: to clarify your mind before the world has the chance to blur it. Begin with silence, not just outer silence, but inner stillness. Don't immediately think about deadlines. Don't instantly replay last night's conversation. Don't let your mind run on old scripts. Instead, sit up straight, close your eyes, and ask yourself one simple question: where do I want to direct my thoughts today? That question will awaken the cognitive control center in your brain, will slow down the automatic reaction chain, and bring you back into a state of agency. You are not being led. You are choosing the direction. That is power. I know there are mornings when you wake up heavy, with a foggy head and a heart cramped by unresolved things. And those are the exact mornings when you need this ritual the most. Because if you wait until you feel better to begin adjusting your thoughts, it's already too late. The morning ritual doesn't rely on inspiration. It is executed as a commitment, as an act that proves, even when everything inside you isn't perfect, you are still not giving up your role as the navigator. You don't need to say a lot, just repeat a few affirmations that you believe. Simple sentences that carry weight for your subconscious. For example, I keep my mind clear. I will not let temporary things steal my permanent energy. I do not repeat what no longer serves me. These phrases are not to make you feel positive. They are a form of setup, like updating your brain's operating system so it knows, today, you're living with intention, not by accident. When you repeat that ritual each morning, your brain begins to respond differently. It stops launching into chaotic thought streams and starts seeking more logical, clear-headed signals. the regions of the brain linked to self-regulation, empathy, and strategic thinking, which are buried when you react unconsciously, begin to activate more strongly. And you begin to enter your day as a leader, not someone being dragged along. If you ask, is it really necessary? Can just a few minutes really change my whole day? I won't answer you with theory. I just want you to try. Not once. Try for 7 consecutive days, 7 mornings without your phone, 7 times sitting down with yourself, 7 times actively choosing 3 simple affirmations. And after 7 days, you will feel something unmistakable. Your mental energy begins to sharpen, no longer vague. You start acting with direction instead of floundering in chaos. And most importantly, you no longer feel as governed by the outside world as before. You don't need everything to change in order to gain clarity. You just need clarity to start changing everything. And that clarity begins with what you do and don't do in the first few minutes after waking up. If you let others into your mind before you even enter it yourself, you've already forfeited your role as owner. But if you choose to reset your mindset each morning through your own ritual, you are doing something that 99% of people never bother to do: mastering yourself before doing anything else. This is not just a ritual. It is a silent declaration that you are living by your own standards. And I believe if you can uphold that in silence, then nothing noisy out there can shake you anymore. Focus is not a luxury skill. It is a form of asset. And if you don't protect it, others will seize it before you even get a chance to use it. Today's world doesn't steal your time with violence, but with distraction. It doesn't knock on the door, doesn't ask for permission. It sneaks in through every small notification, every harmless piece of content, every seemingly normal action that's silently fragmenting your mind. And if you're not alert, you'll lose the most valuable thing: your ability to go deep, to go thorough, and to complete something of true value. I'm telling you, every dream, every goal, every major transformation in your life begins with just one essential thing: uninterrupted focus. You don't need motivation. You don't need perfect conditions. You just need a stretch of time where you can immerse in what you're doing without being pulled away by trivialities. But sadly, this is exactly what most people never achieve. Not because they lack capability, but because they allow meaningless noise to gain access to their minds every single day. Distraction is no longer the exception. It has become the default lifestyle of the masses. People are used to letting 3-5 apps send notifications simultaneously. They work while checking messages, listening to podcasts, scrolling social media, and call it multitasking. But the truth is, no one can build depth in a fragmented mind. No one can create anything solid when they interrupt their thoughts every few minutes, and neither can you. If you haven't intentionally protected your focus, don't be surprised if you always feel short on time, energy, and inspiration without knowing exactly why. Every time you're interrupted, your brain needs several minutes to restore the previous flow of thought. That means you're not just losing time, you're losing cognitive clarity, which is what creates real breakthroughs. And worse, you begin to accept distraction as your normal state. You think your inability to focus is due to a lack of discipline, but most of the time, that's not the case. It's because you haven't set clear rules to protect your cognitive energy. If you're truly serious about your life, you need to become ruthless with anything that consumes your attention without delivering proportional value. Turn off notifications, close unnecessary tabs, put your phone in another room, shut down everything that causes you to react passively. And understand this: you owe no one an immediate response. People will have to learn to wait for you if you've decided not to live in a state of constant disruption. Your focus isn't a nice to have, it's a non-negotiable standard if you want to live a deep, meaningful life. You can't create in a space full of noise. You can't see your path clearly when your mind is being split by dozens of meaningless information streams. And if you don't learn how to clean your mental space, you'll live like someone who's always busy but never finishes anything deep enough to generate meaningful results. So treat your focus like a vital internal meeting. And during that meeting, no one is allowed to interrupt. Not emails, not phone calls, not social media notifications. Anything that doesn't serve your long-term goal is stealing the clarity you need to protect. You don't need 8 uninterrupted hours a day to do great work. You just need 90 uninterrupted minutes. 90 minutes where your mind is not scattered, not pulled, not telling itself just a quick scroll, then back to work. Just 90 minutes of true clarity can shift the entire trajectory of your life if repeated daily. But to gain those 90 minutes, you need to eliminate the things that consume your 90 seconds hundreds of times a day. And that begins with one decision. I will not let my brain become a parking lot for randomness. No one but you can clean up that clutter. No one but you can rewrite the rules for what gets allowed into your conscious space each day. And when you do that, you will rediscover something most people have forgotten: the feeling of clarity, the feeling of knowing exactly what you're doing, the feeling of not being blown by emotional winds, but steering the boat of your awareness. Focus doesn't come naturally. It is forged, sustained, and protected like a flame. A flame that, if constantly exposed to drafts, will weaken, then extinguish. But if you shield it and kindle it at the right time, you'll possess an inner power strong enough to do what others only wish for. So don't let your mind become a landing zone for chaos. Make it a sacred space where only what's truly worthy is allowed in. And you will see, in a world full of distraction, the one who can protect their focus is the one who protects their life. Focus is not a gift you receive when inspiration knocks. It is a choice, a commitment, a deliberate act you must carry out even on the days when you don't want to, when you're not ready, when you don't feel inspired enough. And it is on those very days, the ones when you wake up with a heavy mind, with laziness dripping through your thoughts, that you're given the clearest chance to answer one question: are you living by emotion or by standard? Don't overestimate inspiration. It comes quickly and it leaves just as fast. It's like a breeze, and if you rely on it to begin working, to stay undistracted, to finish what's important, then you're building your entire life on a fragile foundation. I'm telling you this not to make you feel guilty, but so you understand. Those who maintain focus every day are not more motivated than you. They are simply the ones who choose not to live by mood. You can't control whether you feel clear-headed, excited, or fully energized today, but you can absolutely control how you respond to those feelings. Everything begins the moment you look straight at your laziness, your procrastination, your distractions, and say, I'm going to keep going anyway. You don't need clarity to start working. You work to create clarity. You don't need inspiration to sit at the desk. You sit at the desk to generate inspiration. And that is the mindset shift that only 1% of people sustain, and they are the ones who achieve extraordinary results. Focus is a form of loyalty to yourself. It's how you show that no matter the noise outside, no matter the fatigue inside, you will not abandon what matters most. When you focus, you're declaring that you are not living randomly. You're not drifting through life just to check boxes. You have direction, you have boundaries, and you do not allow short-term distractions to disrupt the long-term foundation you are building. The difference between someone who is just busy and someone who truly creates transformation lies in the quality of their focused minutes. Being busy is a form of activity. Focus is a form of commitment. The busy person jumps from task to task, hands moving but the mind already elsewhere. The focused person devotes full mental energy to a single task. They don't let their attention leak. They don't react to every ping on their phone. They create quiet space inside themselves where thought can go deep, and in that depth, they see what others miss. If you want to experience a breakthrough in your life, don't go looking for complex strategies. Look back at one simple question. Did I truly give my full attention to what I was doing today? Because if you can't keep your mind on one thing long enough, you will never go far. Focus is not a nice to have, it is a must. If you are truly serious about this life, you have no other option but to learn how to master your attention. There will be moments when you want to stop, when your mind screams, "This is boring, just a quick scroll. I'm tired, just a short break." But if you let those feelings win once, they'll come back again. Every time you compromise, you're training your brain to say, whenever it gets hard, we're allowed to quit. And if you repeat that enough times, you'll lose your capacity for depth. You'll become someone who gives up easily, who burns out quickly, not because you're weak, but because you've trained yourself that way. On the other hand, every time you stay, just 5 more minutes, you're building a new layer of endurance. Every time you don't check your phone, don't get sidetracked, don't quit, you're proving to yourself, I am dependable. And that trust, repeated day after day, week after week, year after year, becomes the strongest foundation to reach any goal you want. You don't need a perfect morning. You don't need an ideal mood. You only need one decision. Today I choose to focus, not because I feel ready, but because I have defined it as my standard of living. When you live by that standard long enough, your brain will stop resisting you. It will stop trying to escape. It will start cooperating, start trusting, start reinforcing the energy for what you're pursuing. Focus is not a sacrifice, it is a liberation. When you truly immerse yourself in something, you stop thinking about dozens of pointless things. You step outside the petty concerns. You escape the spiral of comparison, doubt, and self-judgment. You are left only with yourself, in clarity, in a mental flow that nothing can interrupt. That is the place where you begin to tap into your highest potential. And you can begin right now. You don't need to wait for a better mood. You don't need to wait for better conditions. Just shut off the noise, sit down, look directly at the unfinished task, and say to yourself, I don't act by feeling, I act by standard. If you do that often enough, something strange will happen. Inspiration will come. Not before you start, but after you. Don't give up. And that is the reward for those who live by choice, not by emotion. You don't need to wait for major life events to train your willpower. You only need to dare to choose the harder path each day in the smallest, most unnoticed moments. Emotional discipline is not forged in bursts of fiery determination, but in the quiet minutes when you want to escape yet still choose to stay. Stay with discomfort. Stay with the things you don't like doing, but know must be done. And each of those moments lays another brick in the foundation of your inner strength. No noise, no glamour, but solid. Willpower doesn't come from clenched jaws or bold declarations. It comes from simple yet difficult choices. Standing up when you want to lie down, staying silent when you want to react, continuing when you want to quit, being decisive when you want to avoid. These choices, repeated long enough, will reshape your identity in ways no one else can do for you. Because when you become disciplined with your emotions, you stop living by fleeting reaction. You live with direction. And someone with direction isn't swept away by short-term waves. They steer themselves through complex undercurrents. I'm not talking to you about suppressing emotions. I'm talking about maturity, a quiet but powerful kind of maturity, when fear, discouragement, or impulsivity no longer break the flow of your actions. Emotions still come, but you don't let them interrupt your commitments. You still feel lazy, still feel anxious, still feel insecure, but you don't stop. And in that very moment, in that split second, when you keep moving, even as your mind begs for retreat, you are winning not against others, but against the older version of yourself. You don't need to win at everything, but you need to win the small battles between you and your instinct to avoid. Every time you procrastinate, you're training your brain to say, if it's hard, we can retreat. And if you repeat that often enough, you'll no longer respond to challenges with grit, but with the habit of compromise. Compromise with old limits. Compromise with temporary comfort. And the price of that comfort is a life without depth. But if you learn to face difficulty, even just a little each day, you are building a kind of strength no one sees but everyone feels. Because emotional discipline is silent energy. It doesn't need to be displayed, but it is present in every choice you make. When others react, you pause. When others panic, you remain calm. When others drift with emotion, you keep your course. Not because you don't feel anything, but because you've learned not to be ruled by what is only temporary. I know you've had days when you wanted to quit. Everyone does. But what separates those who build inner power from those who never reach their true capacity is the action they choose when inspiration is nowhere to be found. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to make sure you don't drift. Don't drift with mood swings. Don't drift with weak emotions, tempting you to take the easy road. And the way you hold yourself steady is by choosing the right thing, even when it's hard, even when it's dull, even when no one is cheering. Especially when no one is cheering. Remember, you can't expect yourself to have high discipline under pressure if you've never trained it during calm moments. That's why every small decision, even getting up early, exercising, sitting down to write, doing what you promised yourself, is important. Because every time you follow through on a commitment, you're reestablishing a signal to your brain. I am someone who can be trusted. And real confidence doesn't come from praise. It comes from repeating trustworthy actions until your mind defaults to, I don't quit just because I feel bad. There are things you must do not because you like them, but because you've chosen to become someone different. That version of you doesn't wait for ideal conditions to begin. They begin to create the ideal conditions. And every time you act as if you already are that better version, you shorten the gap between your current and your potential self. Not through theory, through action. Repeatedly unflashy but uninterrupted. Emotional discipline doesn't make you rigid. It makes you strong in the most flexible way. Because you no longer react by instinct, you respond by choice. You don't let anger knock you off course. You don't let fear pull you back from long-term vision. And that, though no one claps, no headlines are written, will make you stand firm, even when nothing else is holding you up. You want to change yourself? Don't just look for advice or inspiration. Start with one hard thing you've been avoiding. Do it. Even when your mood doesn't support it. Do it. Every day, until doing hard things stops being an exception and becomes your identity. Because once you can do what you don't like, don't want, or don't feel ready for, and still do it right, you're no longer your old self. You become someone even you will respect, and from that respect, your willpower will grow. Quietly, but unshakably. Every word you speak is a piece of your identity, not because others hear it, but because your own mind registers it as a command. If you make promises and don't follow through, if you speak but don't keep your word, if you repeat commitments without fulfilling them, you are silently dismantling the respect you have for yourself. And once you no longer believe in your own words, everything you set out to do becomes fragile, not because you're not capable, but because deep inside, you no longer see yourself as trustworthy. I'm telling you, when your actions don't match your words, it's not just others who begin to doubt you. You begin to doubt yourself. Every time you delay something you promised to do, every time you let tomorrow become a habitual excuse, you're not just wasting time. You're losing a piece of the identity of the person you aspire to be. People don't judge you by your intentions, they look at what you do after you speak. But more importantly, so does your own mind. And it adjusts your internal trust based on what you repeat. Some think words are merely formality, but for someone who lives by a standard, words are commitments. They are internal contracts. Once spoken, they must be acted upon. No reminders, no audience. Not for recognition, but because you don't want to become someone even you can't believe in. Self-trust isn't born from books. It's built through actions that align with your words, repeated until you no longer need to declare it. Your presence alone tells others who you are. Someone who keeps their word doesn't do so because they have extra time. They do it because they respect every word they say, whether it's a promise to someone else or a silent vow to themselves. And that respect becomes the foundation of an identity that cannot be bribed, that doesn't waver easily. People who keep their word aren't perfect. They still get tired, still get busy, still make mistakes, but they don't make excuses. They admit fault if needed, correct mistakes when necessary, and continue acting until the promise is fulfilled. That's quiet strength, the kind that sets you apart in a world where commitments are easily forgotten. You don't need to say much to be trusted. You just need to say little, but have every word backed by action. And if there's any habit worth developing first, it is the habit of only saying what you're willing to act on. Don't make promises to please. Don't agree just to avoid discomfort. Don't say yes when you know you're unsure, because every time you do, you're not just compromising external credibility, you're blurring the line between truth and falsehood within your own self. Identity is not something you declare. It is what you repeat until no words are needed. Others simply feel it. And that perception doesn't come from you trying to seem consistent. It comes from you quietly completing what you committed to, steadily, without show, without seeking validation. In a world overwhelmed by empty words, the consistency between your speech and your actions is what makes you rare and trustworthy. You won't perfect this overnight. There will be times you forget, times you break a promise. But what separates you from the rest is you don't let it become normal. You don't brush it off as trivial. You name it for what it is, a lack of responsibility, and you fix it. You return, you finish, you apologize if needed, but you don't abandon it. And that act of making it right is what preserves your self-respect from erosion over time. You might think, just a small task I forgot, what's the big deal? But every lapse leaves a trace in the mind. If you repeat it often enough, you're unintentionally reinforcing a hidden belief. I say things I don't really mean. And from that moment, you lose the strongest weapon anyone can have, internal trust. On the other hand, if you keep even the smallest promise to write 1 page a day, to not stay up late, to not react negatively, and you hold to it, you're teaching your brain, I am someone who can assign tasks to myself and complete them. From there, trust begins to grow, not from flashy outcomes, but from steady alignment in small actions. You don't need to beat your chest declaring your discipline. You just need to let others see. You don't walk away from commitments, even when no one forces you, even when no one praises you, even when you feel tempted to ignore it. You still keep your word, and you'll witness something remarkable. Others start treating you according to the standard you've set for yourself. They no longer take your words lightly. They no longer propose what you've previously declined. They begin to see you as someone with boundaries, with weight, with identity. And if one day you feel lost, don't go searching for complicated solutions. Return to one simple question. What's the last thing I promised myself, and did I keep it? Because maybe you're not lacking goals. Maybe you're just lacking consistency between what you say and what you do. And when you restore that alignment, you won't need to shout to affirm who you are. You'll just walk forward, and everything else will fall into place behind you. Because in a world full of empty promises, consistency is the loudest voice you can use. Not shouted, but heard by all. Starting is easy. Anyone can begin with a grand idea, a passionate plan, a clearly written goal in a notebook. But then inspiration fades, the initial energy disappears. Everything becomes slow, heavy, and dull. That's when most people quit. Not because they're not capable, but because they've never learned how to finish what they started, especially when no inspiration is left to carry them forward. And that's why they keep looping, starting many things, but never reaching any result. I'm telling you, finishing is a form of strength. It's not as dazzling as starting, not as exciting as planning, but it's what truly separates those who talk from those who do. When you learn how to finish tasks you no longer feel passionate about, you're not just completing a job. You're restructuring your very identity. Every task done thoroughly, even the small ones, is another brick in the foundation of your confidence. No applause needed, no recognition required, just the quiet knowing, I am someone who finishes what I chose to start. Inspiration is what starts the journey, but finishing is what gets you to the destination. And if you still let inspiration be the only condition to continue, you are building your life on the most unstable emotion. Not every day will you wake up with overflowing motivation, but every day you can choose to keep going. And that choice, repeated, becomes the foundation of any lasting achievement. Every time you quit, you don't just lose the time already invested, you create an underlying belief. I don't necessarily have to finish. And if that belief repeats often enough, it becomes your default. You begin to go easy on yourself. You start crafting clever justifications. I'm busy. It's no longer a fit. Later is fine. And while those may sound reasonable, they subtly erode your internal integrity. The more familiar you become with quitting, the easier you bend. Not from weakness, but from lack of training in enduring to the end. On the other hand, every time you finish, even a small task, you are reprogramming your brain to a new standard. You are sending a signal to your nervous system: when I say I'll do something, I finish it. And when you've repeated that often enough, you no longer need motivation each morning. You just look at your schedule, see what needs to be done, and do it. It's no longer about emotion, it's about standard. A standard for how you live, how you treat your own words, how you build identity through action, not declarations. There will be times when you want to stop, times when the weaker part of you whispers, you probably don't need to keep going. But in that very moment, you must answer one question: am I living by emotion or by commitment? If you choose emotion, you'll feel temporarily relieved, but carry an ongoing sense of inner disappointment. But if you choose commitment, you will endure discomfort briefly, but walk away with deep respect for yourself. You don't need to wait for a big project or long-term goal to train this. Start with the smallest things. Finish writing the page you intended to write. Complete the assignment you've been delaying. Fold the shirt you've been too lazy to put away. Make the phone call you've avoided. Fulfill the promise you forgot. Not because someone is forcing you, not to prove anything, but because you started and you respect that. The more you repeat the act of finishing, the less you rely on motivation. The more you live by principle, the more your life gains real weight. People won't respect you for how beautifully you start, but for how well you finish. And more importantly, you'll never truly feel confident if you keep abandoning the things you once said you'd do. Because trust doesn't come from thinking big, it comes from finishing things. You can be silent. You don't need to say anything. But if you live like someone who always finishes, your words will carry weight. Your eyes will hold steadiness, and your mind will no longer feel scattered by unresolved things. If you've left something unfinished, don't rush to start something new. Go back, complete the old task, end it properly, clean it up, learn from it if needed, but don't walk away. Because you're not just quitting a task, you're quitting a piece of your belief in yourself. And if that becomes a habit, you will slowly lose the fire inside without even realizing it. Finishing is a powerful act. It doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be repeated enough for your mind to default to When I begin, I follow through. And when that becomes your identity, you no longer need inspiration to work. You just need the right time, the right task, the right commitment. Everything else will orbit around you, because nothing is stronger than a person who is trustworthy with their own words and action. You don't need applause, you just need to be trusted. And that trust begins with every single thing you finish, even when no one is watching. When everything goes the way you want, it's easy to think positively, easy to stay calm, easy to feel strong. But the truth is, life doesn't run according to your plans. There will be times when you do everything right, yet the results are wrong. There will be days when you give your all but see no progress. There will be phases when you put all your trust in a person, a purpose, a future, and all you get in return is silence or disappointment. And it's in those very moments that your mindset is truly tested. Not when things go smoothly, but when things fall out of sync. That's when you'll know whether or not you're in charge of your life. I'm telling you, if you only maintain a positive mindset when everything is going well, that's not strength. That's just an emotional reflex. But if you can adjust the way you think, even when life doesn't go as you wish, then you're stepping into a completely different level, the level of inner strength. And that strength doesn't come from denying reality, but from your ability to reinterpret a situation deliberately, instead of letting circumstances rewrite your emotional state. When you encounter failure, the first thing you need to do isn't to blame or to shame yourself or to pretend nothing happened. The first thing you need to do is pause, observe, and ask the right question. What lens am I using to view this situation? Because with the exact same event, if you see it as a permanent failure, you will retreat. But if you see it as data for recalibration, you will move forward. Your mindset is the frame for every experience. Whether that frame is positive or negative doesn't depend on the situation, but on the meaning you choose to assign it. You might think, this shouldn't be happening to me. But if you repeat that story, you're labeling yourself a victim, and a victim has no power. A victim waits for something good to happen rather than creating it. On the other hand, if you think, what is this trying to teach me? You immediately shift into the role of a learner, an observer, a creator. And that small change in a single question opens a larger inner space for you to adjust your thoughts, emotions, and action. No one teaches you how to handle bad days. School doesn't teach it, society doesn't teach it, but it is the most crucial skill to remain grounded in a world full of volatility, and that skill isn't about how strong you are, it's about whether you can remind yourself, I can't control everything, but I can always control how I respond. A person who masters their mindset isn't someone who never hurts, but someone who doesn't let pain linger longer than necessary. Remember, every negative emotion starts with a story you tell yourself. Life doesn't defeat you through events. It defeats you through how you interpret those events. If you're unemployed and tell yourself, I'm useless, you're creating an identity. But if you think, this is an opportunity to reassess my direction, you're opening up new space for yourself. And that space is where mindset evolves, resilience matures, and your true self is forged. It's not easy to adjust your thinking when everything's falling apart, but the more you train, the more natural it becomes. Start with your smallest reactions. When someone says something upsetting, when plans fall through, when you feel misunderstood. In those moments, instead of reacting instantly, pause for a few seconds and ask, is there another way I could view this? Not to deceive yourself, but to reclaim control. Every form of control begins the moment you stop letting instinct rule and replace it with a conscious choice. You don't need to force yourself to always be cheerful, but you do need to train yourself to always be aware, because that awareness is the foundation of all sharp thinking. When you lack awareness, you get irritated easily, you panic quickly, you give up too soon. But when you know how to pause, take a step back and see more broadly, you don't just escape negativity, you find new direction, and gradually you'll realize Life doesn't need to always go your way for you to still live aligned with yourself. Mindset is not something you're born with, it's something you train. And every time you manage to shift your thinking in a tough situation, you're upgrading your internal operating system. A person who can adjust their thinking is someone who can live amidst chaos without losing their center, who can hear criticism without needing to retaliate, who can face failure and still move forward as if it's just a temporary obstacle. And the remarkable thing is, when you live this way long enough, the world begins to respond to you differently. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. In the end, what I want you to remember is not to avoid the truth, but to learn how to reread the truth with a stronger mindset. If life isn't going as you hoped, that's not the end. That's just a sign. You're in the middle of a major test, and like any test, you can pass it if you stop complaining, stop waiting for inspiration to return, and start changing the way you think from the inside out. When pressure hits, what's your first instinct? It's to react, to tense up, to fight back or give up. But the problem isn't the pressure, it's how you handle it. Staying calm doesn't mean life is easy. It means you've learned how to control your thoughts instead of letting your thoughts control you. And this, I'm telling you, you're entirely capable of training if you're willing to enter a serious conversation with yourself every time your emotions rise. You can't stop the world from throwing unexpected situations at you, but you can stop yourself from reacting unconsciously. You can't control what others say, but you can control the story you tell yourself when you hear those words. The moment you know how to stay calm is also the moment you reclaim command. In a world where most people act on impulse, the one who controls their thinking is the one who controls the situation. Calmness doesn't come from avoidance. It comes from the courage to face emotions without being swallowed by them. When you feel stressed, instead of trying to push the feeling away, observe it like a cloud passing by. Identify it, name it, and then place a distance between yourself and that emotion. Because if you don't, you'll fall into the trap of reflex, where you think you're deciding, but in truth, you're just reacting from an old habit. Pressure doesn't destroy you on its own. It simply amplifies what already exists within you. If fear is in you, it will show. If there's repressed anger, it will erupt. But if self-awareness is in you, if you have the skill to observe your thoughts, if you have the ability to pause before you act, then pressure is no longer a threat, but a training ground to upgrade yourself. A person who stays calm when everything is going well isn't necessarily strong. The strong one is the person who keeps their mind steady even when everything is in chaos. And to do that, you must learn to return inward before you're pulled outward. Every time you feel triggered, pause and ask yourself, is this thought serving me? Will this reaction take me where I want to go? Just asking that question breaks the automation in your mind. And from there, you open a door where conscious choice begins. You don't have to be the person who's always positive, but you do need to be the person who can reshape the meaning of a situation. Because meaning is where all emotions begin. If you see pressure as the enemy, you'll be overwhelmed. But if you see it as a teacher, you'll shift into a learning state instead of a resisting one. And once you learn how to control how you think, you'll stop getting stuck in outdated mental scripts written by fear or memory. Many people believe that in order to be calm, they must wait for the emotion to pass. But you don't have to wait. You can train yourself to intervene right in the middle of the emotion, and that starts with practicing presence. Just 3 seconds of pause, to take a deep breath, to observe the feeling instead of acting, is enough to stop yourself from being swept away. The more you practice, the more you'll build a strong nervous system, not manipulated by temporary circumstances. Look at great leaders, resilient athletes, powerful guides. The thing they have in common isn't that they're better than you, but that they can keep their minds centered during chaos. And you can absolutely become that person too. Start with small moments. An email that annoys you, a comment that hurts you, an unexpected disruption to your plans. Every time you stay calm, you are strengthening your willpower muscle. Don't hope life will become less stressful. Hope that you become stronger. Because pressure isn't something to eliminate, it's something to understand. You can choose to surrender and let it dictate your behavior, or you can stand up, reframe your thinking, and continue to act from a place of intentionality instead of reaction. The difference between someone who succeeds and someone who constantly feels lost isn't the events, it's the reaction. And that reaction begins in a mind that has been trained not to surrender. If there's one thing you should train every day, it's intentional calmness. It's the skill you bring into every conversation, every tough situation, every important decision. And it doesn't come from the outside. It comes from you, the person reading this. If you are truly committed to mastering yourself from within, you can't control everything that happens, but you can choose one thing: to control how you think. And once you master your thinking, you'll master your reactions, your behavior, your outcomes, and ultimately you'll master your entire life. Most failures don't come from major events. They stem from small habits you repeat every day without realizing it. They are silent, persistent, and always waiting for that moment of weakness to pull you back into the old script. The danger is that you rarely call them habits. Instead, you rationalize them with softer labels. I'm tired, just this once, tomorrow is fine, no one's watching. But deep down, you know you're retreating. You know you're falling into the same loop you once swore you'd escape, and if you don't face this truth, you'll live your whole life inside a loop written by the weakest version of yourself. No enemy is stronger than your own old habits, because they're not loud, they're patient. They wait until you're unclear, then offer the easiest choice. They know you better than anyone else, because they are you from yesterday. But you are not yesterday's version, unless you choose to be. You can choose again, in every moment, every small action. Every time you're about to repeat the old pattern, if you're alert enough to pause for half a second and ask, why am I doing this? Where is it taking me? Does it align with the person I want to become? Old habits don't disappear just because you recognize they're harmful. They disappear only when you replace them with a new script and live it long enough for it to become natural. The new script doesn't have to be grand. It can be you choosing to wake up on time even when your body wants to stay in bed. You writing a paragraph even when inspiration hasn't arrived. You staying quiet instead of reacting in anger. You rising from a comfortable chair to do a hard task you know needs to be done. Each of these small actions, if repeated enough, is how you reprogram yourself. You don't need a revolution, you just need one decision, then another and another each day. And through this chain of choices, you'll start to rise out of your old self. You don't need to wait for Monday or the first of the month or the new year. The moment you're reading this, that can be your starting point. Not the start of a plan, but the start of a new identity. An identity that no longer repeats the things that once made you disappointed in yourself. What you need most isn't motivation, it's commitment. Because motivation rises and falls like waves, but commitment is an anchor. It holds you to what's right even when you don't feel like it. It makes you act like someone with standards even when no one's watching. And that commitment is forged from facing the habits that once pulled you down and silently declaring with full weight, I'm not going back. If you've ever felt disappointed in yourself for breaking promises, quitting halfway, or making declarations you didn't follow through on, this is your moment to reclaim that self-respect. Not by doing something grand, but by keeping your word on the smallest things. Because the more a person keeps their word to themselves, the more they build true confidence. And trust in yourself doesn't come from pep talks, it comes from daily evidence that you're living by a new script, even while the old habit still whispers its invitation. You can't completely avoid old temptations, but you can train yourself to see them sooner, with more clarity, and choose differently. Every time you recognize this is the old trap, and you dare to walk past it, you're rewriting your destiny. You're creating a new self, not through slogans, but through behavior. And the world will have to treat you differently, because the energy you carry will no longer belong to someone who failed. The difference between those who keep rising and those who stay stuck isn't opportunity. It's the silent repetition of their daily choices. You can choose to return to your comfort zone, or you can choose to stand up and act as if you deserve something greater. And whichever of those two choices you repeat enough, it will define who you are in 5 years. I'm not talking about a method. I'm talking to you about a reality you already know well. You're repeating something that once made you ashamed. And if you don't decisively break that pattern, it will keep dragging you along. But you are not a victim. You are the script writer. Right now, starting with your very next decision, choose again, repeat, and then live that choice as if it is your new identity. Every habit, no matter how powerful, must surrender to a will that is trained relentlessly. And you already hold that will in your hands if you don't let this moment pass you by. What makes a person trustworthy is not how they act when there's an audience, but how they act when no one is watching. In silence, when there's no spotlight, no praise, no recognition, is where true inner strength is forged, because in that space, all external motivation disappears, leaving only one thing to keep you going: your own internal standard. And if that inner standard isn't high enough, you'll always act based on what others expect, not on what you truly respect. When no one's watching, do you continue reading that book? Do you finish that assignment? Do you keep the promise you once made to yourself, or do you compromise easily, thinking no one will know anyway? But what you forget is you know. And every time you skip doing what's right just because there's no witness, you're silently destroying a piece of the respect you hold for yourself. No one takes that self-trust from you. You erode it with every wrong choice made in silence. On the other hand, every right action taken in quiet is a brick you lay down to build your identity. No need to show off, no need to prove, just consistency. The strongest people you've ever admired don't speak much, because they have a consistency that others can feel even when they're silent. They walk into a room carrying a kind of energy that makes people instinctively sit up straighter, adjust their tone. That's the result of thousands of right actions they took when no one was looking. You don't need success to have strength. You just need to stay true to what you know is right, and do it consistently, silently, without compromise. That's how you become solid from the inside, and success is just a consequence that comes afterward. A person who works with high standards, even when no one's evaluating them, will soon become irreplaceable. A person who keeps their word, even when no one knows about that promise, will become someone others put their trust in. If you've ever felt a lack of confidence, ask yourself, how many times have you compromised on something you once committed to? How many times have you stopped just because no one was supervising you? How many times have you let emotions dictate your actions instead of your standards? And how many times have you knowingly chosen the easier way, thinking no one cares? The truth is, the world might not care, but your identity does. And if you repeat that enough, you'll start to live as if you have no real worth. Self-respect doesn't come from results. It comes from consistency with what you believe is right. The more a person does what's right in silence, the stronger their inner power becomes, because they know they can trust themselves. And that's the starting point of all true confidence, when you don't need praise to do what's right, don't need an audience to contribute, don't need applause to uphold your principles. You act as if every gaze is present, even when you're alone. You may not receive compliments for the small things you persist in every day. No one sees you tidying your desk. No one sees you finish that last page at 2 a.m. No one knows you turn down an easy temptation to keep your discipline. But you know, and that is enough. because it is precisely those unseen acts that determine who you are when you stand in the noise of the world. If you want to become someone reliable, start by doing what's right when no one is watching. Not for a reward, not for attention, but because you know it's the right thing. And right actions, repeated long enough in silence, will turn you into someone so steady that nothing can shake you. Because you don't rely on the world's feedback, you act according to the standards you've set for yourself. When others say they have no motivation, you'll be different. You won't need motivation. You have discipline. When others act on emotion, you'll be different. You act on principle. When others wait for the right moment to do something good, you'll be different. You create that moment, starting with doing the right thing even when no one sees. And over time, you become someone even you admire. The world may not see you immediately, but don't worry, because the world cannot ignore someone who has built inner strength from silent discipline. You don't have to shout to prove yourself, just do the right thing and let consistency do the rest. Your silence will echo louder than any noise. And in those moments when you choose what's right without needing anyone to know, you affirm the most important truth. I am someone who can be trusted, even if I'm the only one who knows it. No words are more powerful than that. It's not the grand achievements that shape you. It's the simple things repeated every day that silently mold who you become. And if you're not aware of this, you'll live on autopilot, unaware that you're being programmed by the smallest habits. Every morning you grab your phone before a book. Every time you postpone what matters just to do what's easier. Every time you choose convenience over what's right. You're rewriting your identity with a single signal. I'm not truly committed to the better version of myself. A successful person doesn't outdo you in doing grand things. They simply chose a few small things and repeated them enough that they no longer required effort. And I'm speaking directly to you. If you repeat what's right long enough, you won't need motivation. You'll just need habit. No one has the willpower to restart every day, but the winner is the one who's eliminated the decision. They don't need to ask, should I focus? Should I finish? Should I push a little more? Because they've already chosen beforehand, and habit carries them forward even when the excitement fades. You don't need to change your whole life in one day. You just need to choose one small right action and make it untouchable. Wake up on time each morning. Focus fully for 25 minutes. Turn off all devices an hour before bed. These seemingly small things, when repeated with commitment, will reshape your mental structure. Because your brain doesn't respond to ideals, it responds to the patterns you train it with every day. And what you repeat is what you become. If you've ever felt like you lacked confidence, motivation, or control, check what you've been repeating, because every belief is the product of repetition. If you keep telling yourself, I'm not good enough, I get distracted easily, I'm not patient, that's not truth. It's just a belief formed by hearing it too many times from others and yourself. And the only way to change identity is to change the signals you repeat daily. You can't create a new version of yourself by acting from the old emotional script. You need discipline, not harsh discipline, but intelligent discipline. Pick one specific, clear, simple action, so simple that there's no excuse to avoid it, and don't give yourself a reason to break it. It could be 10 minutes of reading, 15 minutes of meditation, 30 minutes without devices. Small things, but repeat it until they become reflexes, because then you no longer have to decide, you simply live by a new standard. Habits are like underground streams, weak at first, but when channeled correctly, they carve deeply into rock and form a sustainable current. You might not see the impact after a week or a month, but after 6 months, a year, you'll find you're an entirely different person. Not because you did something grand, but because you stayed faithful to what's right, even when it felt boring. And in a world always chasing novelty, it's consistency that makes you extraordinary. Others won't see you train each morning. They'll just see you stand firm when the world shakes. They won't know you wrote each paragraph, read every page, honored each principle. They'll only see the results and call it talent. But you'll know that your strength didn't come from birth. It came from repeating the simple things each day, even when no one knew, no one praised, no one cared. And that's exactly why you can't be replaced. If you want to change your life, don't start with the perfect plan. Start with one small action and hold it like a sacred promise to yourself. No breaking it, no compromising, no excuses. Just repeat, because you're not trying to be perfect. You're rebuilding your identity. An identity doesn't come from sudden brilliance, but from quiet consistency. Every time you do the right thing you committed to, you're telling your brain, this is who I am. And every time you break it, you're sending a different signal. It's not just behavior, it's identity shaping. And that identity, sooner or later, will influence everything you do. You don't need to become someone else, you just need to become someone you can trust. And the only way to do that is to hold on to the small but right things every day. No inspiration needed, no validation needed. Just a commitment to yourself. Because in the end, the difference between those who succeed and those who stay stuck isn't knowledge, conditions, or talent. It's how much they respect the simple things they once committed to. And if you want to rise without being swept away in the noise, ask yourself just one question. Did I repeat what's right today, or did I justify what's easy? You are the sum of what you repeat. Nothing more, nothing less. And if you can control what you repeat, you can control who you become. You're not lacking intelligence. You're not lacking motivation. What you might be lacking is persistence with the fundamentals. In a world constantly tempting you with things that are new, fast, and different, it's easy to feel like you're missing out. But the truth is this: no one gets far because of something new. Successful people are those who repeat the basics until they become instinct. They don't need the flashy. They just need what works. And what works comes from digging deep into the foundation, not jumping around trendy methods. You could read 100 self-help books, watch hundreds of motivational videos, try every time management tool, but if you don't stick with a few core principles, all of it is just mental entertainment. The fundamentals are the things no one notices. They're boring, repetitive, uninspiring. But precisely because of that, they hold real power. A person who never misses their early wake-up. A person who never breaks promises to themselves. A person who finishes what they commit to without reminders. That is the most dangerous kind of person. You don't need something new, you need to revisit the old. More precisely, you need to live the old until it becomes who you are. Every skill is like a muscle. It doesn't grow from lifting a new weight, but from repeating the same weight with controlled form. Progress doesn't come from a wow moment. It comes from those minutes when you didn't want to continue but did anyway. Every such day is another layer of foundation laid, stronger, deeper. And when the storm comes, only those with deep roots will remain standing. The basics sound simple. Wake up early, read, write plans, meditate, focus deeply, meet deadlines, avoid procrastination. But because they're simple, they're easy to underestimate, easy to skip, easy to say, I already know this. But knowing is not the same as living. Knowledge isn't power. Only consistent application makes it real power. And most of what's holding you back isn't outside of you. It's your mind being distracted by things that seem like upgrades but are actually sophisticated distractions. Look closely at those you admire. You'll see. They don't chase trends. They're not trying something new every day. They repeat what works. They stay disciplined with the basics. They achieve excellence not from inspiration, but from foundation. And that foundation sets them apart. Because very few can stay committed to what's simple in a world constantly offering something more exciting. Just like a fighter who doesn't practice a new kick every day, but refines one old kick until it becomes unbeatable. If you feel lost, return to your foundation. Don't seek a new solution. Ask yourself, have I stuck with my basic principles? Have I been eating, sleeping, breathing, working, and thinking with intention? Am I living in alignment with what I know is right? Because inner stability always starts from not being swayed by everything outside, and that only comes when you set a solid foundation and respect it more than your temporary emotions. Loyalty to the fundamentals is a mark of a mature mind. When you no longer need to feel like it in order to do it, but do it because you know it's right, you've shifted from being emotionally dependent to being self-directed. And this kind of steadiness will make you rare, because most people are drawn to the new, while the few understand the old, when practiced long enough, becomes greatness. It's no coincidence that every sage, every leader, every champion has rebuilt their life on what seemed ordinary. If you're tired, if you feel unmotivated, don't search for something new to excite you. Return to the old and live it properly, because motivation isn't something you go out to find. It is the reward of consistency. Every time you perform a foundational action with full awareness, you are reclaiming control. You are reaffirming identity. You are sending a signal to your brain, I don't need constant novelty. I just need to go deeper. And that depth, not novelty, is what will take you to the true heights. You don't need to be excellent at everything. You only need to be irreplaceable at one thing. And that doesn't come from learning something new every week. It comes from digging into what you already know until no one can do it better than you. Remember, the peak is not for the fast, but for the enduring. And endurance isn't clinging to inspiration, but choosing the foundation and living it like a sacred principle. And if there's one thing you need to carve deep into yourself today, let it be this: I don't need more, I need deeper. Deeper in how I live, deeper in how I commit, deeper in how I treat the fundamentals, because the foundation I build today will be the platform I stand on when the world around me trembles. And if you can hold on to that, you won't need to chase anything else. You'll become the kind of person others can't catch because you've gone deep enough not to be swept away. Victory doesn't begin with what you see on the outside. It begins with a quiet decision inside you that you no longer wait for better circumstances, no longer wait for someone's approval, no longer make excuses for the past or fear the future. You have only one choice left: to take a step from exactly where you're standing with your full presence. And the strange thing is, when you stop waiting for anything to begin, you become a magnet. Not because you're shining, but because you don't need to be in the spotlight to show up. You don't need to become someone else. You just need to strip away everything that's not truly you, every mask, every label others have given you, every failure that once pulled you down. None of that defines who you are. What does define you is this: whether you dare to turn inward and choose to live by the standard you know you deserve. When you can do that, no one, no thing, no circumstance will have the power to control you anymore, because you are no longer living reactively, you are living intentionally. Others may judge you, life may challenge you, every day may bring pressure, but the one thing you must hold firm is your own mindset. Because every result you're searching for is not found in what changes externally, but in how you respond when nothing has changed yet. Will you keep moving forward, or will you wait until everything is perfect? Will you choose to train your inner strength, or remain a victim of circumstance? The only answer with power is the one you act on, not the one you think about in your head. I don't need to know where you are in life. I don't need to know how many times you've failed, how deeply you've been hurt, or what you've been stuck in. I just need you to know one thing: you don't need to be rescued. You just need to awaken. Everything you need is already within you. You just haven't used it consistently enough. And if you begin today, quietly, without declarations, rebuilding your foundation step by step, you will no longer be defeated by life's usual setbacks, because your inner strength has already overcome them before they arrived. Success is not a destination. It is the outcome of a strong identity. And identity doesn't come from fleeting emotions. It is forged from choices repeated over and over, no matter how small, how unseen, how unrecognized. When you maintain that integrity, even in the smallest acts, you are reprogramming your brain, carving new neural paths, strengthening a version of yourself that doesn't depend on external conditions to grow. That is true victory, victory from within, requiring no validation, no instant results. You don't need to race anyone. Your life is not a leaderboard. Everyone has a unique journey, a different foundation, and a distinct lesson to learn. The most dangerous thing is when you forget that and compare your quiet inner efforts with the polished images others present outwardly. Return to yourself, look inward, ask, did I keep my promise to myself today? Did I live by the values I believe in? Did I act in line with the identity I've chosen? If the answer is yes, you've already won. Even if no one sees it yet, you're on the right path. Victory isn't loud. It arrives when you're no longer swayed by others' opinions, when you no longer delay because of fleeting emotions, when you no longer need to feel inspired to do what matters, when you no longer avoid what's difficult, but walk into it like a warrior. And day by day, you build a stronger body, a tougher will, a calmer nervous system. That's when you stop being swept along by life and begin to lead it. If you've ever thought you needed something special to change your life, let me tell you, you don't. You don't need to wait for the ideal moment. You don't need to wait for someone to join you. You don't need to wait until you feel ready. You only need to commit to what's right and repeat it often enough for your brain to understand you are now living by a new standard. And when that happens, you won't just change your results, you'll transform how you show up in life. From this moment forward, you don't need another motivational video. Everything you need is already in your hands. Today's choice, today's attitude, today's discipline, today's integrity. If you live each of those with full awareness, you'll be amazed at how life responds to you. Because the world doesn't give you what you want, it reflects back exactly who you are being. Victory doesn't arrive when you reach your goal. It arrives the moment you choose to live as if you're already ready, even if nothing's changed yet. Because that decision creates every change that follows, and if today you choose to take the leap, to commit, to stop making excuses, you don't need to wait for anything else. You've already started living like a winner. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this journey. It's not an easy path, but it is a worthy one. And wherever you are, I believe this. If you apply each lesson in this story, then one day soon, you will become living proof of this truth. True victory always comes from within.